So was this 2 weeks ago that we were talking about the parents, or was this several weeks ago?
This was 1 week ago. Last week on the drive home, we were talking about this.
Was it?
Yeah.
So it didn't even make, part of it didn't even make it on a podcast?
No. I mean, I'm sure we've touched some aspects of the topic at some point, I feel like.
All right, so apparently when we were driving around rather, a couple days ago, we were talking about how our parents raised us and certain specific things that they did that we either agreed with or didn't agree with. And we were like, hey, that'd be something to talk about on a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, it basically came down to we were discussing about how when you're a little kid, and I mean this may not be true for 100% everybody, but if you had a semi-normal childhood growing up and you lived with your parents or whoever it was, really, it doesn't even have to be your parents, but the people that raised you, we were saying for us, and I think for a lot of people, that when you're being raised by them, and they like tell you something, it's kind of all that you know. You kind of like take it as fact, and if you trust that person and you care about that person, as your guardian, like you take like everything to heart, and you feel like when you're a little kid, because they're your parent, like what they did is right. Like it was like factual, whatever it was, like from, say you got a cold and they like always had you take like this one kind of medicine, like it's pretty likely that like now as an adult, like it's like a golden rule, like, oh, you get sick, like, oh, this is what I do. And it's like, why do you do that? And it's like, well, that's what my parents did. Like they know. And we were talking about how it's interesting as you become an adult, and especially if you start raising kids, you start thinking about things like that, and you're like, maybe the kid asks you a question or they need something, and you go to like do it for them, and you think about it while you're doing it, and you're like, man, like I don't like really know, like I'm just kind of giving it my best guess, like my best experience of what I think is right now. And then you think back to like, wow, like that's probably what my parents were doing too, and they actually like didn't really have a clue either. Like, and it's weird to have that realization that like the people that you thought that knew everything, like they don't really. They're just people, you know. It's not like anything bad, but it's a strange thing to realize that like they're just people too, and like they didn't know either when they were raising you, and maybe some of the stuff that they had you do wasn't right, and like that was the thing that was interesting to think about.
I think I told you a story a little while ago, but never on a podcast. It was directly related to that, but I think we were going into discipline. Has nothing to do with that, but it was basically it was like a Thanksgiving dinner or something like that, and the wife is cooking a ham, and she cuts off both sides of the ham before she puts it in the pan, and her husband's like, why do you cut off the two ends of the ham? She's like, well, that's how my mom did it. That's how my mom taught me how to do it. And they're like, well, she's like, I don't really know why, but that's just what she did. So they decided to call them, and I wanted to call her on Thanksgiving anyways. They're like, hey, Mom, when you cut the sides off of the ham, what does that do? Why do you do that? And they're like, I don't know really. That's how my mom taught me how to do it. And they're like, oh, what? Wow, okay, well, let's call Grandma. Let's call Grandma and see why. And they call Grandma, and they're like, why do you cut the two ends off of the ham before putting it in the oven? She's like, well, it didn't fit in my pan. So, basically, yeah. I don't know. That's what made me think of that when you were saying that.
Yeah, some
people give you rules, and they don't really know why.
Some traditions that get passed on aren't even relevant anymore, but we still do it because it's a tradition. There's a lot of things just in like regular life that are like that, you know. When you go to ask somebody to roll the window down in a car next to you, you do the little manual window like sign,
Awesome.
you know, like you roll. Like kids these
Yeah.
days wouldn't understand like why you're moving your arm in a circle, like you're rolling down a manual window. They're like, what is that? What do you mean? What do you mean? You just
That
point
is an
down.
interesting thought. I wonder what that's like.
And it's like, yeah, it's like that. The reason that we did that is because back in the day they were hand winding windows, and yeah, it's like, yeah, there's other weird stuff like that too, like the icon on the iPhone for the
for
phone
call?
part. Yeah, the call button
That
is the
seems
shape
to-
of a house phone.
Yeah, it seems to work for everybody though. But
Yeah.
I wonder if they even know what that symbol is. What the-
Yeah, it's just like become.
What is that? Why is there a macaroni on
Yeah,
my phone?
yeah, but
A green macaroni and a red macaroni with a dot under it.
yeah, so that's kind of what we were talking about before, and it's interesting to like actually stop and think about everything. And once you kind of like realize this, you can kind of analyze everything. It's kind of having an awareness of what you're looking for or whatever. And it's interesting to think back about things like that. Maybe think about like traditions that like your family had, or like different things that they had you do at certain times, and to think back now and be like, maybe that wasn't the best idea. Like, if like I know like for me, like there's certain things now, like the way that like I raise the kids that are around me, there's like a lot of things that I do like slightly different. And, you know, it might be better, it might be worse, but it's just like, you know, you got to kind of analyze it and do things as your own.
Why do you do them different? Is it just how you feel, or is it something
Yeah.
that was done when you were a kid that you didn't agree with?
No, not necessarily that. Just, I mean, there are like some things, but a lot of, I don't know, a lot of things are just kind of based on my outlook. I kind of tried to look at things from all perspectives. So I look at how I was raised, I look at how like maybe some of my friends were raised, and then I think about kind of from a blank slate of how I would do it, and I kind of mix all those ideas together and pick out what I think is going to work the best. So I try to be like as open-minded. Sometimes it's easy to get kind of stuck into like habitual ways of like, you know, oh, like your dad never let you like put your feet on the coffee table or something, and so now you like scold your kids when you do it because it was like so much ingrained in you.
Right.
Like you don't even think about it. You're just like, get your feet off the couch, and they're like, why? Like, because I said so. Because you don't do that. Like, you know, stuff like that. Like, I think it can be like easy to get kind of like pulled back into that because it's almost like subconscious. Like you're not even thinking about like why you're doing it.
I don't
but
think
you
that
just
happens to me,
Don't
though.
like it.
I see how it could. I mean, the
Yeah.
brain is crazy, but it's like the things that we weren't allowed to do as kids, like that, like elbows on the table,
Yeah.
and it doesn't stick with me. I remember it. I guess in a way, you know, it does stick with me enough where I think about it whenever I'm like
Yeah.
eating with my family,
You
and
just
I
eat
start to
elbows
relax.
all over.
No, I do
Oh,
it myself, and I
yeah.
almost feel guilty.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
So maybe that, but the things that really bothered me as a kid, I've never passed on to other kids.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's like if I didn't like it as a kid, and now I'm an adult and I can think about it and be like, what the fuck? Am I gonna knock the table over? Or what? I mean,
Yeah.
What the hell does?
Yeah,
just let 'em
there are
do
some
it.
there are some things like that, but it's like you still think about it, you know. It's still like there.
Like shoes up on the dining table. Maybe
Yeah.
that makes a little more sense. But like on the coffee table, it's like really.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just.
It's funny when I don't really care as much. Maybe if I had like a brand new coffee table, I would be like more like sensitive about it. But yeah, like now, like I don't really care that much. But it was funny because when me and my cousin lived together for a little while, we first moved into this house together, and I had a coffee table that was like handed down to me, and I was like, that was the first time that me and him ever like fully like lived together, and we had grown up together, whatever. So I like knew him very well, but he would like put his feet up on the coffee table, like on the edge of the coffee table, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Get your feet off the table. And like, I think it was kind of like a natural thing, you know, like get your feet off the table, like you're gonna ruin it. And I've gotten better over the years, but like, especially with kids, it's made me become a lot more patient. But I used to be extremely anal about like stuff getting ruined. So like something like that, like put your feet on the coffee table, like, oh my gosh, like your shoes, like you're gonna like dent the wood, you're gonna get like dirt on the table, like, and like almost like to an OCD point to where it would like mess with like my habits in life. And like it made me like kind of annoying to be around sometimes, because I would like constantly be like trying to like micromanage people, like what they were doing. And I did that a lot when I first lived with a child. One of the people that I was with had a child, and a young boy, and you know, boys are crazy and they just like run around and they're just like destructive and wild, and like, and he wasn't even that bad, but just having a kid in the house, it's like he would set his cup down. Don't set your cup there. You're gonna get water on the table, you know. Don't bring that cup into the room. You're gonna spill it. Don't, you know, like, don't do this, don't do that. And I was like going crazy, and then finally I'm like, dude, like I gotta stop. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just things. It's just shit. Like, this stuff doesn't matter, really. And I'm being so crazy and controlling to a point where it's affecting our relationship. And like, I'm like, it's not worth it. Like, at the end of the day, like, it's all just bullshit. It's all just things. We're all just here. It's just temporary anyways. So like, I've been able to like see that, pull back from it and relax. And like, I feel so much better. And I think that is one of the things that I get from my dad, because my dad is like very organized, very like a very clean, tidy person. Like, everything's like got its place, and he gets that from his dad. My grandpa, he was in the Air Force, and he was like freaking straight-laced as they come. You know, like everything had its place. He had organization, how he wrote, everything. He had like a plan. Like, everything was like so like thought out and planned. And those are really good things when I channel them into like my work,
Right.
because I can like focus, I can get hyper accurate with things when I need to. But it's been a lot nicer for me being able to have the control over when I want to access that, because having it all the time was like driving me mad, because like the other half of me is like more like kind of like wild and free, and like everything like doesn't need to have a place, you know. It's almost like the opposite. And I think like some of that characteristics kind of like come from my mom. Like, my mom she's not like a filthy animal, but like she's more like relaxed. She doesn't put her effort into like those kind of things. She just has like a different way of like looking at things, like a different mindset about it, you know. And like, neither one is good or bad, but they're just good or bad in different situations. And so, yeah, I like went off. I'm like way out in the ocean over here.
So when you say that you try to ease up a little bit and all these little things, like bringing cups into the bedroom and stuff like that, is just too much, and you try to, ease up on it a little bit, what do? You just let all that shit go? Because I mean, I deal with the same thing, where a lot of this stuff bothers me, but I feel like definitely needs to be kind of a pick your battles kind of thing, so you're not irritating people and making people not like you and not want to be around you, but
and
at the same time, you're still trying to raise a small human being and mold them into what it is. And in my opinion, it's like some of this stuff has to remain constant, because, you know, you yelling at them to, you know, not bring a cup into the room once isn't going to do a damn thing. They're going to forget about it a couple minutes from now.
Yeah.
It's not, but if it's like constantly, like, I don't know. I'm big on, you know, respecting your things, you know, keeping your things nice and stuff like that. I mean, it's nice to have, you know, nice things. It doesn't make you a better person or anything, you know, to have better things than somebody else. But I mean, just to respect. I mean, you might be renting an apartment or something like that, and it's not actually yours, you know, so you don't want to stain the carpet and so stuff like that. I'm thinking, you know, this is at the it's not really that big deal, you know, bring a cup in your room, but I mean, you risk spilling it. And so this is kind of the stuff I think I got from my parents, is that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Definitely respect your things. I agree with that 100%. But I think in the process of teaching that, like, you cannot underestimate the power of a lesson learned the hard way. Like, there are so many things in life that you can try and, like, tell your kids, and, like, they might listen, but it does not ever have the same effect as learning it the hard way. So I think with that, you have to, like, take yourself out of it, give them the information, but let them fail. It's like when they're, like, riding a bicycle, it's like you can try to, like, not let them fall and, like, hold them forever, but 2 years down the road, when they've been, like, riding their bicycle and you've always been there to hold them, and they go off on their own, and then they don't realize it, and they're riding along and they try to ride off a curb or something, and they fall and smash their face, and they freak out because, like, it's never happened, and they didn't even know that was a possibility, because you, like, never let them tip over when they were going slow and, like,
right.
You know, bust their chin or their get a scratch on their arm or something. You know, like, there are things that, like, they needs to be hard learned. And so I think you have to, like you said, pick your battles with, like, how far you're going to let it go, because you can kind of control the scenario. So, like, with, like, bringing a cup in the room, you know, okay, maybe let them bring a cup of water into the room. So if they spill it, it's not the end of the world. But they don't really know that, you know. They just know that there's a cup and, you know, they spill it or they don't. But, yeah, don't let them bring grape juice in onto, like, the new white carpet. Like, that's a little bit extreme. But, yeah, like, and then letting them discover. Because as a parent, you're around your kids enough to know how they are. You know what they can handle most of the time. So you see it coming. You see things coming. You know, like, okay, they're going in here. They have this cup that's filled to the brim with water. They're walking in there, and, you know, the dog's running around them. I'm like, this is a disaster waiting to happen. I know they're going to spill it. It's just a matter of time. And then, but you just let them go. Okay. All right. Well, be careful with that. And you tell them, don't spill it. Oh, okay. Okay. You didn't put a lid on it this time. Make sure that you don't spill it. Okay. They walk into the room. The dog runs in there. They go to set the cup down. The dog bumps their arm, and boom, they drop the cup of water all over the floor. And now they're freaking out because you told them not to spill it. And then, you know, they have to try and sneak a towel or something, and, you know, you find them, and you're like, what happened? And they tell you, the dog hit me, and I dropped it. And,
I didn't do it.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, the thing was, I set it on my table, and then the dog knocked it off. And, you know, they always got the best stories. Kids are mighty creative. But it's like taking that, instead of never letting them take the cup into the room at all, now they realize the responsibility when you tell them something. They bring it in to the room, and if they're not careful with that, they could spill it, and they could ruin something or whatever. Or you know, maybe they got into, like, a little bit of trouble. So next time, guarantee you, because I've seen it happen, they get that cup of water, and they're like, maybe I'll just take a sip and leave it out here. Because they don't want to risk it. They don't want to risk getting in trouble, whatever it is, you know. But, and that's different for everybody. I don't want to talk like I know everybody's children. But I know in my experience, that's what happens is you got to let them learn some of those hard lessons. And just let them be kids. That's a part of being a kid. You know, you mess up, you're learning still, you spill things. And, you know, don't be overwhelming. Because these are the things that I've heard some friends and stuff talk about who had parents that were, like, crazy strict about, like, certain things. It's like yeah, like, one time I freaking brought a cup of water into my room, and, like, I spilled a little bit of it, and my dad, like, freaked out and, like, grabbed the cup and he threw it against the wall and, like, exploded. And it's like, as an adult, they're like, that wasn't a good reaction. Like, It was not a big a deal. Like, my dad freaked out because I dropped a little cup of water. Like, that's insane, you know? So I think it's important to, like, be aware of, like, what you're doing. And I think a lot of kids, or I think a lot of people think that when they do certain things, like, to their kids or with their kids, that since they're kids, they don't understand. But I think a lot of people forget that kids have good memories, and that'll stick with them. And just because they don't understand it now, they'll remember it when they're an adult, and then they'll relive it, and they'll understand what was
Especially
happening.
if it's extreme like that.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Your whole thing before, though, was an argument for pro-discipline, though. I don't know if you noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
I am certainly pro-discipline. And I guess now's a good time to bring up that shitty story, literally, that we talked about last week. But I definitely think discipline is necessary, because that's the thing that you were talking about, where when something happens, you have to learn the hard way. Sometimes there is no... Like, if you tell your kid not to play with the stove, and then they play with the stove and they burn themselves, that's their lesson. They're not going to do it again. But a simple thing like, spilling grape juice on the carpet, they're not going to fucking care. I mean, they didn't buy that carpet. Might feel a little guilty, but I think that's where a little bit of discipline comes in. So beat your fucking kids! No, I'm kidding. We don't do that anymore.
It's not allowed in 2018.
But no, it's got to be something that sticks with them. And we were talking about it last time. My parents are gone, by the way, so I can say whatever I want about them. But when I was a kid, I guess it's safe to say that all kids weren't allowed to shit their pants, right?
Yeah, I mean, most of the part.
I mean, unless you're a real loser parent. Like, yeah, you know what, go ahead. Go to school with shit in your pants. Where the fuck did that come from?
I don't know.
So, I used to have to walk a pretty decent distance to get home from school. And it was all downhill. And it snowed once. And I decided to, make a little snowball and start kicking it around, and noticed it started getting bigger. And, I got like halfway home, and it was this pretty decent sized ball now. And I should mention that at the beginning, I kind of had to poop. But so I'm pushing this giant ball, and got so close to home by that time. It was so hard to push that I couldn't push the ball and not poop my pants at the same time. So I decided to, bail out on the project and go home. And basically the second I touched the doorknob to the house, I shit my pants. And I was very upset because, like I said, parents don't like you to poop your pants. But the way my father dealt with it is he made us take our underwear off and kneel down by the toilet and scrub the fabric together to get all the shit out. And like flush the toilet, and it would suck all the poop out. And it was very effective, but it was definitely something that stuck in my memory. But that's the kind of thing where it was non-violent, and it was kind of shitty, pun intended. But I remember it well, and I only remember having to do that like 4 times because I sunk in real fast. So if I poop my pants, because I was the kind of kid where I was like, I'm playing, and I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing. It's like, I cannot be inconvenienced right now by sitting on the toilet. We didn't have phones back then, so
weighing out your options of
So I mean, I would just push it as long as I could. Sometimes when I'm like waddling to the bathroom because I just can't hold on to it anymore.
Yeah.
But you clean out your underwear in the toilet a couple times, and yeah, you're like, wow, you know what? It's not worth it.
Not a fun process.
I'm just gonna go poop right now while I still have control of my faculties. But so again, that sounds terrible, but I am actually grateful for that one. It's kind of a dark memory, but I don't mind having it.
Yeah.
So I guess from what I hear, my dad was somewhat violent, but I guess I was too young. I never got to experience any of it, thank God. So I think my older siblings would disagree. I definitely don't think violence is cool. But all this stuff, all my disciplines and stuff are all mental. And so those are all the ones that stuck with me. So those are the ones that I kind of, I'd like to say that I passed them on, but never done any of that stuff. I've never made my daughter wash her underwear in the toilet, but I also don't think that she ever had an issue with that.
Yeah. Yeah, some of that stuff. And it's interesting too, like, how like times have changed, and it's like a lot of stuff is like seen as like you're not allowed to do that anymore. Like you're not allowed to like hit your kids at all anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's I think that's probably like one of the things that should probably be discussed more on like a much like deeper level, because like people just kind of like lump it into a thing, like you spank your kids, like you beat your kids, like they just kind of put it, but there is many like levels to that, it's like if your kid is bad and you spank them 2 or 3 times with your hand, like that is much different than like beating your kids over and over again with a leather belt. Like there's, and like I feel like a lot of times people like kind of just see it as all, like you struck your kid, like it's like all the same, and it's like it's not. And I think that there's a lot that goes into it, and it's like I don't know, there's like a lot of different like mindsets about it. And
I think that's why rules are the way they are, is because it's different for everybody. And so
they just
like you just said, like I was spanked when I was a kid. I just said it was nonviolent, but I mean it kind of was. I mean, it wasn't, none of these events were scarring to me. Most of them were like mental, like, oh my God, I disappointed my father so much that he, bent me over his knee and gave me a couple whacks on the ass. Not that it really hurt, like I don't really remember it as abuse, but it was just, it was scarring emotionally, and that's almost, I don't know, like effective, but it makes me wonder if, child abuse is child abuse now by definition, because you got the people that will innocently, whack their kid on the butt when they're, misbehaving in the store, versus somebody that doesn't know the difference and will go home and beat the shit out of their kid.
Yeah.
And since you can't depend on people's,
discretion
rationale,
and
since
shit.
everything's so different, you just got to say, you know what, you don't touch your kid.
Yeah.
And so then that gets into other people's heads, like, no, you can't even bop them on the butt real quick.
Yeah.
Because that's child abuse. So it's like, man, I don't know. When you have a kid, though, it's like, and you realize that you have no control over them, I don't know. I feel like that puts you in a different mindset.
It's
like what's abuse and what's not.
Yeah, it's a very, I think it's like a very complex topic, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions and different ideas, which I think is a good thing, because I don't think it's like a one size fits all. Okay, here's the rule.
Mm-hmm.
If your kid, talks back, on the second time they talk back, you're allotted 2 spankings with your hand. Like it doesn't work that way. Like you have to be able to adapt and change to the situation. Like, you have to know it basically just comes down to having good judgment and not being a shitty person.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking things through before you do it.
Controlling your anger.
Yeah, and I think and not doing it out of anger.
Right.
I remember when I read Chris Kyle's book, American Sniper. For those of you who may not know, Chris Kyle was the sniper. He had like the most recorded like kills of any sniper in the U.S. military, and he did kind of like a autobiography book like about his life and stuff, and they made a movie with Bradley Cooper and all that. You guys should check it out. It's pretty awesome. But in the book, he talked about how they lived in Texas. Their dad was like, hard man, Texas cowboy style, and he was a good man, supported his family, and he didn't take any bullshit. If they talked back or they misbehaved at school, like they would get the belt. But he said it was never out of anger. Like the discipline always came much later than like what had happened. His dad would take time. He would cool down. So he was never angry. He didn't do it out of anger. He did it because he had to, because it was discipline. So it's like, they would come home from school or whatever, to give an example, and they were misbehaving at school. They backtalked to the teacher. Okay, well, later on tonight, you're going to come into my room and you're going to get, your 2 spankings or lashings or whatever it was. And it was very thought through. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like the old school, like rough and tough, like way that, a lot of people did it back then, and I think that has a lot of value because it instills certain morals and judgments into people from a young age. And I think a lot of people don't want to hear that, because a lot of today's people are like, no, like there shouldn't be any violence at all. But like, it's like the truth is, man, like sometimes you don't, like we talked about, learning those lessons the hard way. It's like you can tell them and you can say like, no, you don't do that. No, you don't do that. But unless that there is a consequence that is great enough for them to care, then it's not going to change their mind. You can say, they're misbehaving, they're talking at school, they're stealing stuff, they're lying to you now. Like, okay, like, no, don't do that. And they're like, okay, I won't. And then it's another lie, and then they go and do it because they're kids. They're just opportunists. They're learning. They're growing to become adults, and there's important stages where they're learning how to do things the right way. And if you can't back it, sometimes a stern word, sometimes your kids have enough fear or respect or whatever it is to where you tell them like, no, that's not the right way. You don't ever do that again. And you're like stone cold scared and okay, I won't, I promise. Like, some kids are different. Some kids you tell them, look, I'm very disappointed in your behavior. Kids that like seeking approval, everybody's different. And so maybe that's enough. And so I don't think that going to physical force should be the first step. You need to feel it out, because it should be the last thing that you want to do, because it is kind of extreme and it's tough, and it's difficult for parents to do that unless you're like a complete piece of shit. Like I know a lot of people that have had to discipline their kids. They yell at them, maybe they spank them, and then they close their room, they tell them not to come out, and then they go in their room and cry, because it's a lot. It's hard to do that. You love that child, but sometimes the hard part of loving them is having to give them the hard facts of life and of what's going to happen. Okay, your kids like growing up and they're old enough now, they're starting to like pick on kids at school, and they want to hit you, and you just say, no, stop that, and they're punching you, and they realize that you don't do anything about it. That's like super empowering to them, and they're going to try and pick on everybody that they can just because they are opportunists, and they're just learning. If they come up to you and they start backtalking and they smack you and you give them a pop on the mouth and they're like shocked and they start crying, I'm not saying punch your kid in the mouth. I said a pop on the mouth, like an open hand. You slap them on the mouth and they're like, oh my gosh, like what just happened? Like, okay, I punch you and then you slap me back? Like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be involved in this at all then. And again, there's a lot of opinions on this, and we might get hate for even talking about that.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it's life, and every situation is different. So that's where it again comes down to discretion. And we're not giving advice, we're just talking about things.
Fuck, I'll give some advice, though. If you're the type that, is absolutely 100% anti-contact sport, in any way, you got to do something on the discipline side. If it's like, you don't get your phone for a week, there's got to be a complete lack of discipline. I don't think is acceptable in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
It's almost worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because
for sure.
what you just said, I mean, empowerment is a powerful thing. It's going to grow. And if nothing ever happens, if there's never a consequence, there's nothing that's ever going to, reverse that action. But so if you, I feel like in my own situation, I see a lot of lack of discipline, and it seems to stem from, not wanting to be disliked, basically. It's like, I don't want to discipline because, it's mean and they won't like it, and I don't want to do anything that they don't like. And then so, stuff just gets out of hand. But I don't think that's the way to do it. You gotta be a parent and not a friend. You know what I mean? You gotta get in there once in a while, and you gotta be the bad guy occasionally for the greater good.
Yeah, you gotta look at
it. May be as innocent as you don't get video games for all of tonight. One thing that did stick with me was actually going to bed without dinner. That almost sounds like borderline abuse too in today's standards, but
yeah, people today would freak out. But yeah, I agree.
That stuck with me.
Your kids aren't
again,
gonna
not
die.
Scarred, but
kids aren't gonna die if they miss one meal, folks. Let's be realistic here.
No, now we call it intermittent fasting.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it stuck with me. That was a terrible punishment. No violence whatsoever. Like you said, there's no risk of death or illness from skipping a meal. But
yeah,
man, going to bed and the sun was still out. Oh fuck. Yeah, I recommend that one.
Just brutal. Yeah, ironically enough, like, I was spanked, like, somewhat as a child. I remember, like, my mom having to, like, spank me certain times. But, like, a little backstory. Like, my parents got divorced when I was, like, really young. So, like, a baby almost. Like, I was just a couple years old. And so, like, basically my whole life it's been, like, they've been separate. And so, and my dad was always like very, very like stern and upfront, and my mom was like a little more like laid back. And going to the opportunistic thing that we were just talking about, when I was at my dad's house, I was always like on my best behavior, and I kind of like feared him because he never like let me get a step ahead. Like he was always like on top of it, and like I don't remember my dad ever spanking me. But like I had the fear as if he had before. It was like it was a strange thing. And even as a kid, like I kind of understood this. And but at my mom's house, she was a lot more like laid back, And this is typical, which I have seen like in relationships that I've been in with other people that I've seen, friends, family. When you have a single mom, it is quite often that the mothers are a lot more of like the loving and caring side. It's like the two parts of like the family, the typical like mom and dad relationship. The moms are loving, the dads are stern and make the rules. It's kind of just how we've adapted over years or whatever of how we go. And so like the moms are like typically a lot more like just nurturing, and then the dads are more like firm. So when you have a single mom, you have the relaxed and like nurturing side. And I know this is different for everybody. Some people's moms are like have an iron fist, but like with my mom, she was just like very like kind, nurturing, loving, always wanted me to be happy. But with that, being an opportunistic child, I took advantage of that, and I was an asshole when I was a little kid. Like I've talked to her about it as an adult, and she's like, no, you were a good kid. And again, that just goes back to her being like nurturing and loving. But it's like, no, I look back and like I was a Tasmanian devil. Like I was a little crazy wild child, and I'd like run around the house and doing stuff, and I wouldn't listen. And talk back and all of this. And like, I remember her like having to like spank me a few times in my life, and it like, I mean, it never like affected me in any negative ways or anything, but it was just funny how like with that like just extra little bit of extra freedom, I was a completely different person at my mom's house than I was at my dad's house.
Right.
And like my dad didn't even have to do anything. He just had like a firm word with me, and I like, whoa, okay, like, and you just don't let anything slide. And I've seen that like now with like the relationship that I'm in, like with my girlfriend's kid, like when it's just me and her, me and the child, like she's on her best behavior. Like she doesn't talk back. She listens. She eats her food. And she knows it takes like a short period of time. There's a little adjustment period where like they're like kind of battle you with stuff. But it's like she knows now, like, I don't like put up with anything. I don't let you get away with it. I don't let you not eat your food. I don't let you like slide, because I can just have that firmness. You know, it's almost like you block out your emotions for how cute they're being. And you're like, no, I don't care. If you want, like, pretend you're going to cuddle on my arm, like, no. Like, you're going to finish your food. You're going to go to bed on time. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And it's like with my girlfriend, she's an excellent mom, and she loves her child more than anything in the whole world. And it's much more difficult for her. I see it in her. She wants to be firm. And, I mean, there's time, like, if she pushes her too far, she can get firm. And she'll start speaking to her in Spanish, and that shit gets real. And shout out to the Latino moms out there who start speaking in Spanish, and shit gets crazy. But yeah, so it's just funny because you can, I think that you can get around a huge percentage of any kind of like physical discipline with preventative stuff, preventative maintenance, you know, being firm with them, not letting them slide, because we've all seen those parents that are way over their head. Maybe they have a few kids. You're walking through Walmart and the kids are freaking climbing through the coat racks and bouncing off the walls, shoving ice cream in the cart, and the mom just has this kind of blank stare as she's pushing the cart down the aisle. Like she's just so overwhelmed, and like there's just nothing that she can do. She let it slide for so long, and now they're just fucking wild animals that are running her life. And it's like, it's true. I've seen it happen so many times. Like there was this one time I was at Walmart, and it was just as you pictured, as I was saying before. These kids are running, they're screaming, they're yelling, and the mom's kind of like, don't do that, but like not disciplining them at all. Yeah. Just saying, you know, don't do that, don't do that. And then this kid runs by one of the displays they have in the center of the store, and it was like boxes of cereal or something. And this little fat kid just runs and just knocks all these boxes off. Just on purpose. Just smacks them all onto the floor. Wow. And there was a worker that was there. This like older lady that was working. And she stops, and you could see in her face, like she wanted to beat this child. And she like looks at the mom, and the mom's like, what are you doing? Stop that. Pick that up. And like just in the, you know, no seriousness at all. And then the kid like picks up he's like, okay. So he picks up the boxes and then just kind of throws it again. And the Walmart lady came over, and she was like, you knock that off right now. Pick these boxes up and put them back. And the kid was like, oh, okay. Like, it's like he'd never been talked to like that before, right. You know? It's like, oh, it's like, this lady knows. This lady don't deal with bullshit. Like, you know? And she made him, like, put it all back. And I'm like, man, I don't understand how you go out in public with these little animals. You need to get this under control. This is outrageous.
So let's look into that a little bit deeper then. Because in the world we live in now, she could not discipline those kids the way they needed to at that moment. So what's happening is they go home later and still nothing happens, and that's why they're the way they are.
Yeah, it's just that was just a compilation of years of letting things go and not having discipline. You could tell the way that kid talked back to his mom, the way that they ran around and screamed. They had no rules. It was just ruleless. They just run around, they eat what they want, they do what they want. And for whatever reason, you know, not trying to judge anybody, but the mom just didn't discipline the children the way that they needed to be.
Right.
And like we said, that starts with little things, you know, not letting them get away with little things, because it compiles, and they're opportunistic, and they will slowly build up a tolerance to what you say as they learn. Okay, oh, she's not going to do anything if I eat some cereal when I'm not supposed to. Okay, well, I'm going to eat this candy now and see what happens. Okay, well, you know, I'm going to lie about this and see what happens. Oh, she still doesn't do anything? Okay, I'm going to run through Walmart and scream. Oh, she still doesn't care? Okay, what else can we do? Like, kids just want to have fun and just run free and be all wild and crazy. And it's like, you gotta control that. Let them be children, but don't let them be out of control. And the thing is, let them be wild when you allow them to be wild. I think it's important to let the kids go a little crazy.
Just gonna
maybe
say
run
that.
around a little bit. Yeah, you can't box them up, because you got to realize they are children. But I think the number one rule is that you will listen to me when I say, I'm going to let you do certain things because it's important for you to do them, because you're a kid. I want you to have fun. I want you to have a good life. I don't want you to be boxed up in a caged animal and treat you like you're supposed to be an adult right now when you're 5 years old. No, you need to have fun. You need to run around, burn off energy, play, scream, yell in certain situations when I say it's okay. Because when we go out, we're somewhere else, and I need you to be quiet, but you've never listened to me before when I told you to be quiet, you're not going to be quiet.
Right.
You know? But if you know, okay, mom put on her serious voice, serious face, she's telling me to be quiet, I know that I need to be quiet, because the last time she put on her serious face and I wasn't quiet, she gave me a little whooping on the booty, and that I didn't like that. So, all right, I'm going to listen, and I know that eventually she'll let me be wild and free again.
I think respect is probably the biggest deal for me. That's what I try to instill in the wee ones. And like you just, like my nephew will come over, and he's young, he's a boy, he's crazy, he runs around and does all kinds of stuff. And the older people in the house, you know, they're very short fuses. I guess it's just an old people thing, but it's like that time it's like, you know what, he's a kid, he's going to be a kid, and I'm really patient with stuff like that. But it's not until you're like in a movie theater or something and he starts asking or acting like that. And it's like, so respecting other people is something that I'm constantly, it's something I never let down on, you know.
Yeah.
It's misbehaving, you know, at the restaurant or something like that, yelling and screaming. That's when it's like, hey, nah, no, we don't do that shit.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then, but as soon as you gotta let off on it, and as soon as you get home, you know, they have that outlet. I can run around the house. I don't care. It's like 9, or when we're babysitting him, it's like 9 o'clock at night. He's still running around. It's like, do whatever you want. And Grandma's like, oh, she's not having it. But it's like, it seems to be mainly just respect for me.
You will not
caring about other people is really important.
You will not embarrass me in front of these people in public right now. Screaming your head off. You are not that child. We do not like those children that scream in public and the parents are not even listening to them. That's the worst.
Yeah.
You need to get your shit under control. If your kid's screaming his head off in the middle of a store and you act like you can't even hear him because you're used to it. Motherfucker, we're not used to it. That's not fair. You can't put people under, can't expect people to just want to deal with your screaming child. And I think that it's important to say that as a community, we should all be understanding of things to a certain extent, you know.
Right.
If somebody's walking through a store and they have a newborn baby and the newborn baby is crying, be understanding. Put yourself in their shoes, you know. Maybe this is the only time that they could get out and they're trying to get some more food for their baby or for their family or for the family dog or something, and the baby's hungry and the dad's at work and you're trying to do this all by yourself. Like, have a sense of community, you know. And I think that comes with when you have your own kids, you understand way more. You can tell the people that have kids and that don't, because somebody will have their kid and it'll be crying. Nothing crazy, you know. The baby's crying a little bit and people just look like so angry. Like, why are they out in public with that thing? It's like, well, it's a tiny human, okay? We're all humans. This is where we come from. We're tiny humans. And when we're tiny humans and we get hungry, we cry a little bit, right? So deal with it. You did the same thing when you were a tiny human. But yeah, like, taking your baby to an action movie or a horror movie and they're screaming and crying the whole time. Not the place to be. There's a difference between going to the grocery store and doing something than taking your baby into a place where it's typically mostly adults.
Right.
You know, if you're at the park and your kid's screaming, like, okay, maybe that's a little more understandable. There's kids playing, maybe something happened, maybe they bumped their head and now they're crying and screaming. Okay, understandable. But, you know, you got to have discretion. Think about things. Think about other people.
A lot of people don't, though. That's the frustrating part. The world would be so much better if everybody could be more open-minded and be able to put themselves in other people's shoes. But it seems like many people just, they cannot do that. That's one of the things that I try to train my little girl with is, you know, being, again, respectful and thoughtful about other people. And I wonder sometimes if she's still just too young to understand this stuff, and I don't know how to teach that stuff. Just like I'll like bust her balls when we go to like Olive Garden or whatever, and she walks through the door and she slips through the crack really quick and the door shuts on me. I'm like, really? Are you serious?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. I was like, well, I was behind you the whole time, but it's not just me. I don't care that you did it to me, but if I saw you do that to somebody else,
yeah.
Oh my God, I see that all the time. You know, when you're walking and then there's like they're like 16 years old and they're in front of you and they do the same thing. Yeah. It's like, oh, I don't want to touch the door. I'm just slip through there really quick.
It's like,
and then it shuts on
it's
you.
Like
and
a fun
it's like,
game.
Yeah, it's like, dude, that is, oh man, why would you? And she actually told me something which made me laugh. She's like, I used to hold the door for people, but I got stuck holding the door for like 10 people. I was like, yeah, I mean, I've been there too. It happens. And it does suck because then you got the other assholes that like take advantage of you, and it's like you got the person that's like 100 feet away and they're just like, you know, nice and slow
on the phone.
Walking up there. And it sucks. I was like, yeah, but
and then they don't say thank you.
Oh.
I'm gonna slam this door on the back of your head, person.
But I'm like, crazy. these are the small prices you pay for being a nice person. It's just better to be a nice person.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, it doesn't matter that you left the door shut on me. I don't care.
Yeah, that's one of the things that definitely stuck with me specifically was holding doors. You know, my dad taught me that when we would go out to eat, and it would be me and my mom, and then my stepdad, when her and my stepdad got together, he would always tell me, hey, go run up ahead, grab the door for your mom, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, it's crazy the amount of value in holding the door for somebody.
Right.
Like the shit that like the and it's fucking crazy because people are surprised nowadays. Like sometimes when you do it.
Right.
And it's like they shouldn't fucking be surprised. Like it should be a normal thing. And like that like drives me crazy. And like we said before, like when you open the door for the person and they're on the phone and they act like you don't even exist, like the door was automatic. They don't even look at you. They just walk in like they're a prince, and you just like, I'm like, oh, like that shit pisses me off. But then I remind myself, like, it's not about that. It's not about doing it for, it would be nice if they were a nice fucking person, but you know they're not now. So, okay, whatever. That's done with. Like, they're an asshole. They can be that way. But, like, I don't, like, put that back on myself anymore because I used to get, like, really frustrated and be like, really? Like, what the fuck? But now I'm like, okay, whatever. Some people are like that. Some people are not. But I hold the door regardless because I'm not going to become jaded about it. You know, I'm not doing it for the recognition. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Somebody's walking up, it's polite. You hold the door for them. Right. So fuck it. If they don't want to say thank you, then fuck them, whatever. They can move on. They're probably a fucking shitty person, or maybe they forgot, or maybe they're having a bad day, whatever. Give them the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, the power of holding the door for somebody, and also, like, you'd be surprised how many times, like, we go to get into the truck and I open the door for my girlfriend, which, like, that, like, I'm a lot, like, less good at. If we're, like, on a date, like, I'll do it, like, religiously, but if we're just out, like, every day, sometimes it's, like, not the most convenient thing, and, like, I don't. Right. But I enjoy doing it, and, like, people, that's, like, one thing that's way less common, that people will fucking, like, I've heard people, like, yell at me from, like, 3 cars down, like, oh my gosh, Look at it. Is he fucking holding the door for his girl? That's so fucking cute. I've seen fucking girls be like, why the fuck don't you open my door for me? You know, like that shit. That shit's funny. I like that. But, yeah, like, open the door for somebody. Be nice. Be a good human.
I'll swat my wife's hand when she reaches for the door handle. So it's like I'm trying to do
Lock
something
the
nice,
door
but
again.
I'll
Yeah.
smack her. Like, no!
No, I'm doing it.
But I think I'm the same way. I won't. We're like walking out of the store, and the passenger side is the first thing we come to. Every time she'll get the door open for her. But
Yeah.
if it's like facing the opposite direction,
Yeah, it's like,
it's
you
like
get to it.
yeah.
We don't got time for this.
pretty much.
Chivalry can wait.
But the whole doing stuff not for recognition is ideal. It made me smile when you said that. I saw something on the news recently where this guy paid for everybody's layaway. I think it was here in town. I don't know if it was here in town. I guess it doesn't really matter. But walked into a Walmart or something like that, walked back to the layaway section and said, I want to pay off everybody's layaway. You know, it's almost Christmas. I don't know when you guys are going to hear this, but so people would come in, you know, to either make payments or pick up their stuff, and they find out that their bill was completely paid. You know, Merry fucking Christmas. It's like, wow, nobody knows who the guy is, and they had one picture on the surveillance of the back of his head walking out, and nobody knows who he is. And that's the shit. If you're going to do good stuff, that's the type to do. I hate it. I mean, it's great when people, you know, donate to like, you know, I don't know, let's just say the Cancer Society or something like that. You know, they donate, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's really noble, but it's like they get like a press release and stuff like that.
Like
And it's
famous
like,
for it.
hey, you know, this guy gave to these guys. And it's like, what was the actual reason for it?
Yeah, it's just like stroking your ego.
Kinda. Yeah, and so it's like, man, if you're going to do something good, it kind of sucks to not get recognition, but at the same time, you should be doing it because it makes you feel good and that you know that it's a good fucking thing to do. And that should be all the reward you need. You know what I mean? Yeah. Don't tell people. You know, I'm saying that and I'm kind of guilty. Like when we go to Baskin Robbins or something, they got the little tip jar there. I'll like have my wallet there and I won't put the money in unless they're in the vicinity, you know, so that they see it. So I'm kind of hypocritical in that aspect.
Yeah.
But
it's because, like, I feel like it's probably because you're stroking your own ego, but I make the excuse in my own head that I want them to see it so that they feel good. Like,
right.
Oh, like, that's awesome. I got a tip.
It's kinda,
yay.
I'd like to think that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah. But who knows?
Because, I mean, there's times where they don't even say thank you. You know, a lot of times they do. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, that's cool. And there's sometimes they don't, but I don't get mad like the door people.
And then you
know.
pull it out, and then you put it back in. You're supposed to say thank you. We got 1 minute before this cuts off.
Oh, all right.
Well, we kind of jumped all over the place on this one. We talked about kids and family and learning traits from our parents and spanking your kids. And yeah, it was pretty wild.
It was good, though. I liked
Yeah.
it. Made me feel
Talked
good.
about some stuff, get people thinking. Think about things.
Go donate some money and don't tell anybody about it.
Yeah. Spank your kids and don't tell anybody about it.
Those
Just
aren't the
kidding.
jokes you want to do.
Oh, sorry, everybody. I dropped you on your head.
All right, guys. Until next time, go crush your dreams.
Crush your dreams, people. Love you guys.